here tonight to OTF Connects and thank Colin Jaco for facilitating the photography and the photo editing workshop. I certainly am looking forward to tonight's session, and hopefully I can pick up a few pointers. I take millions of pictures and then just leave them on my memory stick. So hopefully I can learn and enjoy, everyone. Thank you, Colin. All yours.
Okay, so I'm just going to give everyone a quick walkthrough here. Can you give me a green check mark if you're familiar with this interface? You will find the check mark option below your name. There's 4 little icons, and it's the right-hand one. If you just hover your mouse over it, you'll find it. Oh, good. You know how to pick the red X if you're not. Alrighty, thank you very much for letting me know that. It's good to see many of you are familiar. I know from previous OTF Connect sessions as well. So we are going to move on, and here we go. So here's a little snapshot of the interface. I'm just going to grab my little pointer tool here. In the upper left corner, we've got the audio video box. If you happen to see the big black space there right now, you can click that little arrow to the left of the title audio and video, and that's the minimize arrow, and it will shrink that box and allow you to have a little bit more space if you need it. Of course, we've got the talk button there, so you're going to turn that button on to use your microphone, and most of you have already figured that out. If the talk button is grayed out, that means that the maximum number of microphones are already in use, and you just have to wait for someone to turn off their mic, and then you'll be able to click on it again. Right below that, we've got the participant window, which lets you know who's in the room and what we're all doing. Below your name, there are those 4 little boxes. The smiley face, if you hover your mouse over top of that, a little list of icons will pop up that you can use to communicate throughout the session, especially for those of you that don't have a mic. And you're going to be using the chat box, but everyone can also use these as feedback tools to call in throughout the session to let us know how we're doing, if you have a question or have some confusion or things like that. The icon immediately to the right of that one is the away icon, and when you click it, you will have an away notice that shows up under your name, like David. Yes, Colin, I understand that you might confuse easily. If you do need to step away and attend to your family, you can just click that and let us know you're not there, and then click it again when you return. Immediately to the right of that, we've got the raise hand icon, and I have just clicked that, and that lets Colin know that I've got a question that I might like to have a turn to speak. And if you all want to go ahead and click that right now, you'll see how that works. Very good. So it shows up in ordinal numbers according to who clicked the button first, and so that's the order that Colin will call on you if we have more than one person raise their hand at a time. You can click your hand button again to make it go away. And then, of course, we've got the polling option, which is currently set at the green check, red X, and you can use that to respond if Colin asks a quick question like I did about using the interface. So the next spot that I want you to know about is the chat box, which you're already using. And in that space where you type your message, over on the right-hand side, there's another a little click arrow that you can click on, and there's a whole bunch of emoticons that you can select if you want to use those to communicate. Now, the most important thing about those 3 panels that I just showed you is that you can click on the title bar of any of those boxes and just grab it and move it and resize it so that you can maximize. Perhaps you'd like to see more of what's going on in the chat, less of what's happening in the participant box, or you can just move it around so that it fits your desktop a little better than the default layout that it's currently in. Now, the whiteboard that's immediately, to the right of those 3, I think Colin's going to be having a presentation that will be in that whiteboard space for most of our session, but I am going to show you a couple of the tools. There's the little white toolbar strip that's on the left-hand side of the whiteboard, and if you go and click or hover your mouse over the starburst symbol, that's where I've got that big yellow arrow pointing. You can select one of those pointer tools, and that becomes your mouse cursor, and you can go anywhere on the Ontario map and let us know where you are currently joining the session from. I'm going to drop mine right about there. When you finish dropping your arrow or your finger or whatever you've used, you can give me a green check mark to let me know that you're done. Fantastic. Now the other one I'm going to show you that I should have asked Colin, are you going to be needing them to participate using any of the text options tonight?
You mean like the polls and things like that? I wasn't planning on it, no.
Okay, or the typing on the whiteboard anywhere?
I don't think so. It may come up, but it's not part of the plan. It could come up unplanned, as things often do, but it's not part of the plan.
Okay, then we will leave that for now and go ahead and move forward to your presentation. So welcome, Colin, and everyone. Here we go with photography and photo editing with Colin.
All right. Thanks, Louise. I appreciate that. Thanks, Christine. This is an interesting one because this is something that, and like Syria said, you know, she takes thousands of photos, and I'm not an expert in photography by any stretch. I like to play with photography. I like to play with editing, and as an educator, I like to see where all of that stuff sort of fits in education. And so that's kind of what I thought about when we decided, or I decided to offer this particular workshop. Just maybe a bit of background about me. You can see there's a link to my about.me page there if you're interested in finding some of the stuff. And actually, this will get you to things like my photos that I share on Flickr, and I'll share you a link with those later. You can go take a look, because sharing photos online is one of the things that I do want to talk about a little bit later on. One of the things that sort of I have done in the past is through OTF, we've been fortunate enough through the work of Syria and her team to put a couple of conferences together, particularly with the crew from Minds on Media. And some of you I know are familiar with Brenda and Peter and what they do for Minds on Media. But one of the things I did was I ran a session on photography and photos and education. And when you go to one of these Minds on Media sessions, it's an elbow session where people come in with their laptop and you sit down and maybe you load up the software that they may not have, and then you take pictures with your camera and you can sort of sit down one-on-one or one on a few with people and sort of go through, well, what do you want to get out of your photos? What do you want to do with your photos? Do you want to use them in class? Do you want to use them for personal use? What is it that interests you? And I don't really have that right here, right? So what I want to do before I get any further and tell you about sort of what I was planning to do, or what I'm hoping to do tonight, in the chat room, just while I'm sort of talking about this, give me just a brief idea of the kind of things that you're that you would like to do with photos, or you'd like to be able to do, or you want to learn more about. Is it all personal? Is it educational? Is it, just so I have an idea. Now, I'm kind of doing a little bit of both here, and I think what I go through this evening can definitely be useful both in your personal use of photos and professionally in your classroom. But if you just, in the chat room, just start putting some of the stuff that you might be interested in, that'll at least give me an idea of sort of how to spin it, because there's lots of different things that you can do. Okay, so let me see. Elizabeth, digital storytelling, excellent, awesome. Kath, primarily how to edit photos at school. Okay, great. Oh, a yearbook supervisor, wonderful. You want to teach some student photographers, awesome, great. And Charlene, personal and education, yeah. And that's awesome, because when you and Christine, sort of the same thing. Ideas for classrooms, some personal stuff. One of the things that I'm a really big sort of believer in and proponent of is that teachers have to learn at least a little bit about some of these particular technology pieces if they're going to use them in the classroom. And there's no better way to use them for use them in the classroom. Rather, there's no better way to learn about them than trying them for yourself with your own stuff. So using your own photographs, using your own memories, making your own photo collages or books or whatever it happens to be, then you learn about it and you very quickly see where you can apply them to things like digital storytelling, for example. And once you've got some of those skills, you can go back to your yearbook team and say, here's a few ideas, and kind of cut the kids loose on some of those ideas. So I see this as totally being valuable in a lot of ways. So that's cool. And you guys have basically confirmed that my initial plan was the right one, and so we're going to touch on a little bit of everything as we go through. Just to sort of talk to you, this photo that I've got here, right? This is just a simple idea, right? It's kind of a neat photo, and I just like the way this one turned out. This is my daughter. I took this photo about a year ago. She's got more teeth now. Those holes are gone in the front of her mouth, but they're filled in again. But this was just, it's a photo of a photo, and there's all kinds of very simple things you can do. Now, I took a photo and then put it on my iPad and had her hold the iPad up and then retook the photo again. But you can just have, a photograph and then consider putting a photograph within another photograph. And there's all kinds of ideas that come out of there, and it's the kind of thing that in things like digital storytelling or in sort of neat layouts or whatever for yearbooks pages, you can sort of get some really neat ideas just by something as simple as doing this, right? As putting a photo within a photo. So it was just a simple idea, and it was prompted by an online group, and I'll talk a little bit about that kind of stuff later on. So that gets us started. All right, so I do have, you know what, John, if you're familiar with Dear Photograph, it's exactly like that. And I had taken this photo before I found out about Dear Photograph, but it's the same idea. And if you don't know what Dear Photograph is, I think it's dearphotograph.com is the website, and it does exactly that. It's people who take particularly old photos and then retake a picture of them in the place where the photo was originally taken, and then tell a little story about it. So it's something that if you're curious at all or want some inspiration, it's a neat thing to look up. So just real quick, I'm going to just sort of talk through the agenda here. And I've sort of broken this into, in my mind, sort of three different parts. The first part is why we might want to use photography in education. And again, we're all teachers, so I'm going to put that band on it, but obviously any of this stuff is also useful personally, and maybe more so useful personally depending on your context. So I just want to talk a little bit about why, some of the philosophy around it a little bit, throw a few possible ideas. Thanks, Christine. Perfect, that's awesome. A few possible ideas for classroom or project use or school use. And again, there's millions, but just to get you sort of thinking about it. So that's the first part. Then I sort of broke it into kind of, well, how do you take and make photos? And I use those words specifically because you can go out with a camera and take photos. We're going to talk about different kinds of cameras and things like that. But I'm a real believer that photography is art, and that this took me a while. I'm going to be honest, this took me a while to sort of come to the realization that it's okay to play with the photos after you've taken them, right? I came from trying to make good photographs with film, and once it comes out of the camera, that's that. And so when I started into digital photography, I really wanted to take that same idea and say, okay, I want to make a good photograph, I want to learn about exposure, and I want to learn about composition, and take a good photograph, and when it comes out of my camera, that's my photograph. And sometimes that happens, right? And that's a wonderful thing when that happens. But I've sort of realized that one of the big affordances of doing things digitally is that you're not tied to what comes out of the camera, right? Photoshop is the darkroom for film. You're exact, and more so, because I could never have the skills to use a darkroom. But with something like Photoshop or even simpler, apps on your iPhone and things like that, you can do some really cool stuff very quickly. And it took me a while, but once I sort of realized that digital manipulation was okay, and making photographs was almost more fun than taking photographs, that sort of opened up a whole world for me, and that's sort of what I want to share a little bit today as we go through. So in order to do that, you need some software. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the software that's available. In particular, I'm going to focus for a short period of time on Photoshop Elements, which is something that as educators in Ontario we all have access to. So we'll talk about that, but then I'm also going to talk about some other software options, because pretty much every computer has something on it to get started with photo editing, at least some of the basic photo editing. Both Windows machines and Apple machines, Macintosh computers, have all kinds of stuff built into them to get you started right away. I'll touch real brief on the idea of apps using things like iPhones and stuff like that. So that's sort of the second part, is the sort of the hardware and the software idea around photography. And hi Leslie, no worries. Thanks for taking the time to join us tonight. That's awesome. So that's the second part, like I said, and then the last part is kind of, what do you do with all those photos, right? Talking about how do you move them around, places to share them, and how you can share them in ways that might be useful either personally or professionally in your classroom as well. And at the very last thing I've got here, I'm hoping that towards the end of the session here tonight, we can actually take some time and make a few photographs and share them with each other. So when we get to the last part of the agenda, we're actually going to have some time to go and grab a camera and snap some photos and try and upload it and try and put some of this thinking into play, at least in a very sort of short time frame to do something, right? Because I'm a big believer that we learn by doing, and I can talk to you for an hour and a half, but that's not going to be the best learning. So we'll talk for a little bit. You guys can obviously interrupt me at any point and ask questions. Put them in the chat. I'll try and keep an eye on that as well. But at the end of this, I want people to hopefully make some photos as well. Take them and make them and share them. So let's get started. So why do we use photography? Well, this picture in my mind sums it up in a lot of ways, right? Because it's fun. I don't think anybody who takes photos doesn't take photos, it doesn't make them happy, right? Whenever you're taking photos of people, you're often telling them to smile, and whenever you're taking photos, it's not stressful. It shouldn't be stressful. It's just fun. And photos have a very unique ability, right? I sort of titled this 1,000 words, right? The very first part of my slide deck. We've all heard that expression, photos worth 1,000 words, but I think it's more than that. It's deeper than that. That visual media speaks to people in a way that text never does. Like I look at these faces here in front. There's 20 faces here, and I see something different in each one of these kids' smiles, and so it's telling me a story, right? So to me, photography is a really interesting and wonderful way to share stories and then to put those stories to use. In terms of in the classroom, photography is a wonderful way to help us learn, to demonstrate learning, to help us construct our understanding of things by using these different things, these different photography tools. It's just a wonderful tool to use in classrooms. And then the last thing about why is that there's cameras everywhere, right? The camera has become ubiquitous, and if you've got a cell phone or if kids in your class have cell phones, there's cameras in your classroom. And I know that there's different rules around using those kind of devices in our schools and in different boards and things like that. But I think, and I firmly feel, that the reality is if we've got these things in our pockets, they should be leveraged for some sort of effective learning and used with the kids. So why not use some of these things? So we'll talk about some of those things, and there's issues around that a little bit. But I just really believe that we've got this power, we've got this ability to grab photos anytime and anywhere. So why shouldn't we use them? All right. So there's just some of the philosophy behind what I think, anyway. I just brainstormed a few ideas as I started thinking about ideas for uses of photography in a classroom. I mean, my mind just went 1,000 different places, so there's a list of 7 or 8 things here. But this is just the starting point, right? So, and some of you have probably done these things already. I mean, things like day in the life of your classroom or displays of student work, photo journals of learning. We do a lot of journaling with kids, right? I know like learning journals are well, for a lot of teachers, they use them for a lot of different purposes, for literacy and for tracking math and for tracking, lab results in science, that sort of stuff. But photojournals, I think, have a really big place as well. And I don't know that we use them maybe as much as we could. So that's just an idea there. To document process and product. One of the things that I'm really focused on right now as an educator is thinking about the process of learning for kids. Not so much the end result of what kids produce, but how they get there along the way, providing feedback on the journey of learning. And I think that using photography is a good way to capture that. Even if it's as simple as taking photographs of student writing during the writing process and then using those photographs on, say, an interactive whiteboard to sort of share the path that students took in a very metacognitive way after they get to a certain point, to help reflect and to provide feedback on the process. Because I think one of the things that's hard in teaching right now is we talk a lot about process being very important, but it's something that's sometimes, I don't know, it's ephemeral a little bit. It's kind of hard to pin down. And something as simple as photography is a way to start to document some of that process for learning for students. So I just think there's a lot of valuable stuff there. I'm a science teacher by background, so things like photographing what we used to sketch. The amount of hours I spent with my eye glued to a microscope trying to sketch some cells that I saw there. And Syria, I know you're a science background as well. You can probably attest to the same thing. And my sketching never got any better. It's just something I could never do. But with photographs now, with so many different cameras, the ability to just put a camera on the eyepiece of a microscope and take pictures is pretty much there. You can do that. You don't need a whole lot of special equipment just to take pictures through, say through a microscope. Then there's other things like digital microscopes that have them all built in that aren't very expensive. So all of these things so you focus on the learning rather than the frustrating process of trying to sketch a cell in a phase of mitosis or something like that. So that's just something that I thought about. And then there's things like capturing field trips as you go out and capturing notes. One of the teachers I was working with, trying to think, it was just not too long ago, it was only a few weeks ago, they had said that one of the things that they started noticing more and more is that at the end of a lesson, kids are walking up to the board, blackboard, whiteboard, whatever it is, and snapping a photo of the notes that the teacher had put on the board. So they were doing their own work in their book, but then they were going and capturing in a picture what had been put on the board. So just simple things like that, right? Simple things like that. Yeah, and I think, Surya, it's not just time saved, but it's time better spent. Right? It's not that we're cramming in more things. It's that we're not getting bogged down in the minutia of things that take a lot of time just because they take a lot of time. We can take these photos and then get on with the learning, and it's different. And I think it's really important to think about that. Working smarter, not harder. Yeah, bingo. And you guys have it. You guys know that. So those are just some ideas, and I put reflection, feedback, assessment. Those are just some of the assessment buzzwords that are floating around today. So, but I think the visual component is really huge, and I can't overstate that enough, I don't think. So let's talk for just a few minutes about some of the things that you can use. And like I said, cameras are everywhere. Cameras are ubiquitous, and I mentioned things like cell phone cameras. If you've got a newer iPod or an iPad, there's cameras in those. I mean, cameras are everywhere, and we know that. They're basically built into every mobile device now. But then obviously you can get cameras that are, specifically designed to be cameras. What a concept that is. So over on the right, you've got things like full-on, Canon digital SLRs. In the picture in the middle here is the little point-and-shoot digital camera. I mean, there's all kinds of cameras that are out there, and there's no one best camera, right? There's no one best camera suited for education. There's no one best model. The best camera, and this is a bit of a cliche in photography, is there's an expression in photography that the best camera is the one you have with you, and it's a bit of a cliche, but it's 100% true, right? And I've got a nice digital SLR camera, but I don't often carry that around anymore. Since I've got an iPhone, I've got a decent camera in my pocket, and for just going out and capturing the world around me, I use that sort of 9 times out of 10 now, because it's the one I've got with me, and it's not a bad camera. It's it's not as good as my high-end camera, but it's a lot smaller and it fits into my pocket, right? So we've got them. We as teachers have them. More and more teachers have them in our pockets, and we know the students have them. But then they're also cheap. I mean, little point-and-shoot cameras for a classroom, for example, for for $100 or $200, you can buy a decent little camera that can be used for anything in your classroom. And so there's just the price has gotten to the point where it's silly in my mind not to start to use some of these things in our class. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next page here. And I already talked about the fact that cameras are everywhere. And one of the things that I've really started to pay attention to in the things that I do is the cameras and laptops, right? Because in my mind, for educational purposes, these things are invaluable. And we tend to think, oh, it's a webcam, it's used for web chatting, and that freaks some people out. Administrators will sort of cringe at that idea. People will cringe at that idea. I do a lot of video conferencing and I've done a lot of video conferencing with students. I do a lot of video conferencing in the job that I'm in now. But as we get more and more devices in our schools, they've all got cameras in them. And so what do we do with them? Well, we should be using them. And even if we're not doing things like video conferencing, the cameras themselves can be used to capture anything. So things like if you're doing a science lab and you've got a laptop there and you go through the different parts of the procedure, and every few minutes you stop and use the webcam just to snap a photo because it's on the lab bench beside you, and in the end you make a little stop motion animation with those particular photos, right? Then you've documented the process of, say, the setup of a lab, but you've done it with photos and turned it into a little movie, and you've used that laptop that you've got or netbook or whatever it happens to be for something that, a few years ago, heck, 2 years ago, it wasn't possible, and now it's there. So because these things are everywhere, I really think that we need to start to think about them and use them. And this particular one here is a laptop in the classroom of a friend of mine. And so he's got it there, and you can see that they're capturing themselves. I don't know if you can see really close in the screen what they're doing, but they've got, I think it looks like frames 4 they're working on, and they've captured some images and are putting into a stop motion animation. So, and again, there's I believe it was Elizabeth who talked about digital storytelling, right? So capturing photos of either yourself or something in your classroom as you work through a story and build a story, that's afforded by that stuff as well. All right, so they're everywhere, they're easy to use, and they're valuable. So what do we do with them? Well, there's lots of things. And just to give you just a real quick idea, so you capture the photos and then you do something with them. Okay, and I already talked about how that's helpful to make photos. Some of the things we have available to us for free, and I just used the little arrow there, Photoshop Elements 7 or 8 is OSAPAC licensed, available for Windows and for Mac, and licensed by OSAPAC through the Ministry of Ontario for use by every teacher in Ontario. So if you don't have this on your computer at school, you should be able to get it, right? It's also available for take-home use. So somewhere in your media library, you should be able to get a CD, take it home, and install it on your home machine, on your laptop, whatever you've got, because it's available for teacher take-home use as well. So I'll give you a quick run-through of Photoshop in a little bit, kind of a brief orientation. But this is a very powerful piece of software, and we have access to it for free. I think if you went to buy it, it's FutureShop would be like 120 or 140 bucks or something like that. So it's not peanuts for any stretch. So I recommend you find that if you don't already have it on your machines. And I'll give you just a brief run through of kind of how Photoshop is set up to hopefully get you started. If you've got just any computer, there's photo software now bundled with every computer. If you've got a Windows computer, there's Windows Live Photo Gallery. That's just part of every machine now. You can use it to view photos. You can do a lot of editing of photos, cropping and changing color and all those kinds of things right in the software that's bundled with your PC. If you have a Mac, iPhoto is part of the standard Mac operating system, suite of stuff in there as well. So these things don't cost anything, and they're really good. If you're not interested in doing a lot of extreme editing with something like Photoshop, the basic stuff in excuse me, iPhoto or Windows Live is great. It's really great. If you're really interested in things like open source software, there's this piece of software called GIMP. You have to Google that one and find it. But it's a free open source. It's very much like Photoshop actually, but it's completely free and available for anybody. Picasa by Google is the same thing. It's free. It's a great editor, and it's built in with Picasa Web, which is Google's online photo sharing, which has sort of got kind of blended into Google Plus a little bit, but it's still there. And then the last one is Aviary, and I know that OTF, I'm not sure if it's already happened or if it's going to happen, an Aviary demonstration. Jacqueline will be doing it. It was last night. Thank you, Christine. Now, she was focused on the audio stuff, I think, right? Yes, for music. But that same suite has photo editors built into it as well. So if you've started to use that for music and audio and stuff, you can go into that same suite of tools, and there's photo stuff posted in there, photo editing software posted in there as well. Again, quite easy to use, free, fully online. Awesome. I'm glad it was a great session. Okay, so this is just a few things. I'm going to talk about Photoshop here in a few minutes, but just to let you know that there's all kinds of ways to play with photos. So once you've taken photos with your camera or whatever you've got, there's tons of ways to get started. If you're into Apple devices at all, I just thought I'd give a quick run through of some of the things that I like. If you've got an iPhone or an iPod or an iPad, there's all kinds of apps for editing photos and for posting photos, that sort of stuff. A couple of the big ones I put up here. Instagram is probably the most popular one right now. It's very simple to use and makes kind of retro-looking photos, just a couple of taps and away you go. I'm not going to go through all of these. They all do sort of different things. But the last thing, and these things change all the time. And if you notice here, on the very bottom of the list, I put iPhoto for iPad and for iPhone as well. And the photo that I've got on the right side background here is the new iPhoto for iPhone app. And it was released this afternoon. I literally downloaded it while I was eating supper, and I played with it for about 10 minutes before the session started and just took a quick screenshot and threw it out there. But it does all kinds of stuff. And this is, I think it was $4.99 for this one. So a lot of these are free or just a couple of dollars to play with. So if you've got an Apple device, there's tons of apps available just to make some, very simple, quick and fun, and there's the key, fun edits. And I can almost guarantee that there's probably kids in your class with an iPod in their pocket. So maybe the time to start thinking about some of these free apps and the cameras in them, is now. So, what can we do? And this goes back to Elizabeth's idea of digital storytelling, and these are also either free or OSAPAC licensed software. So I'm really focused tonight on what to do with one individual photo. So take a photo, edit a photo, play with a photo, share a photo online, right? One picture at a time. But when you start to put multiple pictures together, then you start to get stories. Right, and that comes into the digital story, photo story, and you're right, Elizabeth. It's very easy to use. That's a PC-based one, and it's free. I know a lot of boards have it installed on their machines, but if you just wanted to get it at home, if your board doesn't have it, and you've got a PC, you can just go to the Microsoft Photo Story site and download it. And it's very simple. You can put in music, you can put in images, and you get like a narrated, animated slideshow with your photos. Very simple for everybody to use. Kids love it. Kids are just they take to it very easily, and when you give them a good learning goal, right? Show me how to do something, and then you give them the photos and the tools to work with. It's very easy for them to go and make something that demonstrates their learning. Okay, and again, it's always about the learning, and so we always have to remember that. Frames is another really good one. Frames is really cool. It's OSAPAC licensed as well, so it should be on your machines in your schools. If not, it's able to be put on there because it's a ministry licensed one. This one's really cool because this allows you to take multiple images and make stop motion videos. So like claymation kind of things. You can get kids with little figures and animate them and do one photo at a time, and then they can put audio and narrate over top of them. There's all kinds of ways to use it. Frames works really nicely, and I mentioned this earlier, with something like a laptop or a netbook if you have access to some of those, with the webcam on it, and you set up your scene in front of your camera, and then you just keep clicking the button to take the pictures right in Frames, right in the software, and then you can process it right in there. It's a lot of fun. Okay, there's the OSAPAC website. Thanks, Louise. So you can go and see what we have access to as Ontario teachers. There's tons of stuff there. And then the other thing, and I put Pixie down here, and I'm gonna be honest with you. Pixie is one I had not played with up until this week. It's one of the newer ones. It's the same company that makes Frames also makes Pixie, and I hadn't played with it before. I've got a secondary background, and every time I've looked at Pixie, it's sort of aimed at like K to 6, and I just never had a reason to look at it. And there's always something else to go and do. We never have enough time. But I spent about a half an hour playing with Pixie, and it's cool. I'm going to tell you, if you're looking for something fun to do, and if you teach elementary school, even into high school, I would because I was having fun using it. It's simple. There's lots of sort of kind of clip art. They call them stickers, but it's essentially clip art kind of things to put on top of your photos, and you can narrate them and add sounds. It's fun. It's quite simple to use, and it's really fun. So if you want to take that next step, once you've sort of played with photos, and you want to use them with kids for a purpose, Pixie is another good purpose to put to another good piece of software to put a purpose to. So it's another good tool. All right, so moving right along. Time, we got 8:07. Okay, this is good. We're good. We're doing good. We're doing good. And again, I know I'm talking a lot, and please, if there's been a few things popped in the chat, and I appreciate that. If there's something that doesn't make sense, you want me to slow down and show you something, please just do so. Okay, just do so. Yes, Leslie, that's the Tech for Learning site. And if you're interested in learning, on the Tech for Learning site, they got tons of videos that are like video tutorials, mountains of stuff in there to learn how to use all of these software that we have access to. So the ability for us to learn is just so simple right now because all that stuff is there, and the Tech for Learning site is a great example. I'm going to show you how to use some of the features in Photoshop to help you learn, but the Tech for Learning site to learn about Frames and Pixie and Image Blender is unbelievable, right? There's just so much good stuff in there. And then I want to give just a little bit of a plug to sharing photos, right? There's tons of ways online to share photo. I mean, people are probably, use things like Facebook and stuff like that to share, and that's fine for what it's worth, but you're sharing it within your little group of friends or family. I'm going to suggest that when you talk about photography, I'd start sharing with other people, not just within your circle of friends and family. And that's where something like Flickr is a really good tool, because you post things there and they're public. And Flickr is an amazing community unto itself, but things are posted there publicly, and it's easy for anybody to then see and share and use your photos. And any of the photos that I've pulled up here, I've either taken myself, or I've got photos that are licensed through Creative Commons licensing for anybody to use with attribution. And I think earlier in the fall, when was the Creative Commons session? It was a few months back, I believe. Maybe Louise or Syria could mention that. I'm pretty sure we had a Creative Commons OTF PD session as well. And as educators, I think that it's something that we need to be aware of. First of all, that we can go and use freely licensed photographs, right? So I'm talking tonight about going and taking photographs and then making them, but you can go and find photographs and then put them into stories and play with them. There was February 7th. Great. you know, provided they're shared appropriately. And so if we're putting things online, I suggest it's sort of almost imperative on us to allow people to access the things that we post. So anything I post with a Creative Commons license so that other people can use it, provided they give some attribution to me as well. There's no money involved, but it's just that it's referencing is essentially what it is. And if it's just that intellectual property and you know, acknowledging that you're using someone else's work in a proper way. So that's it. So the recording is on the site. That's great. So if you're interested in Creative Commons, you can go and look at that. And again, I just threw a couple of others here as well. Picasa is sort of Google's photo sharing site. Instagram, I said, runs through an iPhone or an iPod app. And then something just like Twitter is just very simple to share photos on. You take stuff and you upload it through Twitter and tweet it out, and it gets sent up to one of a variety of services. I put a couple there. But there's all kinds of ways of sharing your photos and getting them out there for people to see. And I think that's important. Especially because, you know, if you take the time to make a good photo, it's sometimes nice to have other people see it. So, Photoshop elements. In Ontario, we have, and I mentioned this, Photoshop elements, 7 or 8. 8 is obviously the newer one, but there's really not a whole lot of difference in them. There's a few little differences, but nothing that sort of warrants talking about. So if you have access to either of those, you've got a very powerful tool at your disposal. And I'm not sure how big people's screens are here. I've got a couple of sort of zoomed in screenshots. What I want to do for about maybe the next 10 minutes or so is just give you a very brief overview of Photoshop elements, of kind of the layout of it. We don't have time to teach what all of the different tools are, but I want to show you how you can learn what all of the different tools are. So I hope that makes sense. As we go through, if it doesn't make sense, you know, please stop me, because there's no point in walking out of here more confused than when you came in. So what I've got here is just a screenshot that I took of the Photoshop Elements working environment. So you can see, obviously, in the middle here is the picture that I was working at, just a picture I took at the bird feeder in our backyard a couple of weeks ago, a chickadee. And there's tons of tools. If you look down the left-hand side here, all of these buttons are tools that do different things. And if you look close, a lot of these buttons have a little black spot, and that's actually an arrow. So each button is actually like a drop-down menu or a fly-out menu that has more buttons inside. So each of these has multiple tools and multiple levels of tools in there. So there's tons of things, and I'm not going to go through them all right now, but just to sort of, I'll point out a few of them as you go through, or as we get a little bit further. So that's on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side over here, you've got, and I've highlighted, there's, I don't know if you can read it or not, but this is the effects menu. And all of these, you can see all of these different little thumbnails do something different to a photograph. So it'll make it look like I don't know, like a charcoal drawing, or it may put some interesting lighting effects on it, or it'll make it look like an oil painting. There's all these different things that are built in there. And this is the kind of stuff that when you give kids an opportunity to play with and say, here's a bunch of different things, and they have a photograph, they'll instantly go and try and make it look as funky and as weird and as wild as they can, which is great because they're learning how some of these things work. And I mean, we do the same thing. So all of the effects and the things you can, some of the things you can do over here in terms of filtering and changing things, the whole photo. So this changes the whole photo all at the same time. Okay. So that's sort of the two sides. Now, I'm going to move ahead one slide here and talk just very briefly about the tool menu. So this is a zoomed in section of the tools here. And over here on the right, I just say hover your mouse over a tool to see what it does. Because literally, if you've got your mouse and you hover it over, and now this doesn't do it because this is the picture, obviously. I'm going to try and share my screen with Photoshop on it in a few minutes, but again, I don't know how that's going to work, so I thought I'd just give you this little run through first. When I hover my mouse over this, I'm going to get a little pop-up menu that says eyedropper tool. So it's going to tell me what it is. I may not know what that does yet, but at least I know what it is, and that's the first step in figuring out what it does. Okay, so if I come down to this strange looking thing here, it's going to say crop. Oh, okay, well crop. Well, what does crop mean? Well, crop means to take a section out of a photograph, or just crop it to the piece that I want. So you start to learn just by hovering over these things, clicking on the buttons and seeing what they do. Right? That's one of the things I find working with students is they don't have any fear in pushing buttons to see what happens. And sometimes as adults and as adult learners, we want to, okay, if I push this, what's going to happen? We've got that sort of trepidation, and I'm here to tell you that it's okay just to push buttons and see what happens. If you mess it up, you click undo, or you close the program and you shut it down and you come back another day. It doesn't really matter. You really can't break that stuff. It is instinctive, John, and it's I don't know. It's funny. It's in a lot of ways. I think it comes down to that no fear and that feeling that nothing could hurt them and that they can do no wrong. And sometimes we know that goes awry with kids and it can lead them down problematic paths. But when it comes to learning how to use software, it's the best way to learn, right? So that I don't know, that what's the self-control that we try and instill in kids when they're acting in the 3D world and not to do rash things. When you're in like working in Photoshop, just clicking buttons is okay. You're not going to hurt anybody. You're not going to break anything. You're just clicking buttons on a menu to see what it does. So it's an interesting balance to try and find when we're working with kids. So jumping to the other side now, and you can see now there's three things here. This is the one here that we looked at originally, and you can see here's the effects that I showed you in a little bit closer picture of kind of the filters that you can have in Photoshop. But what I wanted to show you here is this drop-down menu, and I just pointed my little arrow at it, says Edit Full. So this is a full-on edit mode. You can do all of the tools that are available in Photoshop. So when you're in Edit Full, I'm going to back up one slide. Oh, two slides, sorry. So right now you can see here it says Edit Full as well, and I've got every tool available to me in all of Photoshop. That can be sometimes overwhelming if you don't know what the tools do, and to be honest, I don't know what most of them do. I have an idea, but I've not used all of them. So Photoshop has a really cool sort of built-in set of features to help us learn about Photoshop, which is really kind of cool. So if you're in full edit, you have access to everything, which is great. But if you don't know how to use everything and you want to start smaller, there's a couple of other ways to start. In that drop-down menu, right? So if you click the Edit Full and you get a drop-down menu, it says Edit Quick. Now, instead of having a whole bunch of buttons that I don't know, I've just got sliders. So I've got something called Smart Fix, which is literally, it tries to do it for you. It's like the easy button, right? So you can see there's a little auto here. You click the auto button and Photoshop tries to make the photo the way it thinks it would look best. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work quite so good. But down here you can see these sliders in the lighting section. So you want to lighten the shadows, I want to darken the highlights, and this is my midtones. It's pretty simple, right? So if you have a photo where you've got dark spots in it or something in a shadow, okay, this slider lightens what's in the shadow. So you just grab that slider and you drag it across as you've got your photo open, and you'll literally see the dark spots in your photo getting lighter, right? So it tells you what to do, and then you just grab the sliders and slide them back and forth. So that's kind of the intermediate way to fix photos you're fixing the whole photo all at once. Okay, so that's very useful, and I use these things quite a bit. The thing I actually use the most, or that I used to use the most when it came to learning how to use Photoshop, is this Edit Guided mode. So in the guided mode, you can see here, and this is great for, first of all, it's great for us when we're learning how to use these tools, when we're learning how to use Photoshop. It's even better when you're teaching kids how to use it, right? Because it helps them learn how to learn as well. And it just says, what do you want to do, right? What would you like to do? So if you say, well, I want to crop a photo, it will then step you through step by step how to crop a photo. If I wanted to rotate or straighten the photo, I don't know about you, but I'm very often, if I take a photo of, say, a horizon, it's often crooked, right? Because it's not perfectly straight because I took it too fast and the camera wasn't at an angle. When you're dealing with kids, I can guarantee, and I think, John, it was you that said you're the yearbook guy. When kids are taking photos, so many of them are not straight. They don't take the time to line up their guidelines in their viewfinder or whatnot to get a straight photo. It's very often crooked, right? So something like rotating it or just straightening it out by rotating a little bit is a very key thing to use. So I'm going to show you. So let's just say I wanted to rotate a photo. I've got another picture on the next slide here that shows. When I click how to rotate a photo now, it tells me and it walks me through everything to do. So just take a look at what this does. It says click on an icon below to rotate the image left or right. And you can see here it's got a picture of this icon that tells you what to do, right? So that's the rotate one. Now the thing is, on the main menu in the full edit mode of Photoshop, these are the same buttons. So you're learning how to use the buttons, and then when you see them in the full menu, you know what they're for. If you want to straighten the photo, say it's just slightly askew, right? It tells you, and I'm just going to read here, I don't know how good your screens are. It says click the straighten tool, then draw a line on your photo. The image will rotate to the angle of the line. So it's telling you how to use this straighten tool, right? You don't have to get out the manual, you don't have to dig into the help menu, you don't have to take a course on Photoshop. It tells you, click the straighten tool, then draw a line, and the image rotates to the line. When you're done, you click done, and you're finished. So this is just one example of the rotate, but all of these guided questions, I'm going to step back here, right? So do I want to recompose the photo? Do I want to enhance colors? Do I want to adjust the brightness? What do I want to do? Every time you click one of these questions, you get a little walkthrough that tells you what the tools are, right? Tells you how to use them. And then the button that you're using is the same button that when you're in the full Photoshop mode is over on the side menu. So you learn one button at a time, and eventually you go, oh, that's the straighten tool. And then you just know how the straighten tool works. You don't have to go through the guided edit every time. So it's a really good sort of built-in support and learning tool that Photoshop has built into it. And like I said, I learned so much by doing some of these little guided things, just by playing with them to see what they do and clicking buttons to say, okay, well, how does this work and what does that do? And quite honestly, there's so many of them there. I've not actually used them all. And I was clicking on one the other day. Which one did I click on? Oh, the recompose one, which is a really cool tool. I'd never used it before. But it walked me through how to use it, and so now I know how to use it, and it's just very cool and very user-friendly. Right. So that's a bit about Photoshop. Now I can, hopefully, at this point, just briefly show you, let me just see here. I think I'm going to have to pull it up. I'm going to share my application, and I'm hoping, this may take a few seconds, it depends on your bandwidth and all of that fine stuff. So I can still actually see the chat over on the left-hand side. So can somebody just put in the chat, can you see my Photoshop screen here? Can you see the little chickadee with the seed, so to speak? Yes, I do. Okay, great. So Charlene does. So hopefully it's coming across. Syria does. Great. So I thought I didn't know if this would work for everybody, so that's why I just very kind of quickly went through with some of those static screenshots. But I'll just sort of kind of cover that off again, just so you see here. Okay. So now hopefully you can see my cursor as well. Okay. So over on, I'll just drop the menu down just so you can see the difference between edit full, edit quick, and edit guided. Right? So when I'm in the edit full mode, I've got every one of these tools. And remember I talked about if you hover over it, you get the eyedropper tool. Now, I'm not going to do this, but it might be kind of hard to see, but the eyedropper tool is underlined. And if you're used to the internet at all, you know that things are underlined. Well, you can click on them. Well, if you click on that eyedropper tool, it takes you to some information about how to use the eyedropper tool, which is just really handy and really useful. Okay. So here is the crop tool. Okay, so just to show you real quick, and I'm not going to do a whole lot of photo editing with this one, but so I want to crop this, right? So I just click crop, and let's just say I just want Mr. Birdie here zoomed in. Okay, so you can see, hopefully, it's darkened around the outside because this is the part that I'm going to discard. It's still outlined the part that I want, and there's a little green arrow down here that says commit current operation. Sounds very official. I click that, and the rest of it's gone. Right? So now I've got that photo a little bit smaller. Right? So I'm going to zoom in. Right? I just want to. And there's all kinds of screen shortcuts for this I'm going to show you. I just pull that off the menu. So now I've got a zoomed in photo of the little chickadee here. Okay? So there's all kinds of things you can do. I'm going to click, like here, I'm going to pull down this menu if I just want a black and white photo. I just click convert to black and white. It gives me a before and an after. There's all kinds of different ways of making it look. Right, playing with the sliders again, you can see all of these different adjustments. Oh, I pulled the reds down a lot. That didn't work very good. So you can play with things. You click OK, and now in just a couple of clicks, I've taken that photo I had, I've recomposed it, cropped it, made it black and white, and now I've got this very different looking photo of the little black-capped chickadee. Right, so it doesn't take very long to start to do some really neat stuff with the photos. And like I said, I'm not going to get into a whole lot of the specific bits and pieces in here, but there's so much neat stuff you can do in Photoshop. And like I said, once you start to dig into it, there's things, for example, under image? Oh, excuse me. I'm just trying to think now. Oh, here we go. Some of the filters, right? You can add filters under here. You can blur it. You can just all these different things you can do with it, which is it's just so much fun. Like quite honestly, it's just so much fun just to play with photos. Yes, she is a beauty. This little one here. They were wild and woolly at the feeder that day. It was one of the cold days, and they were just going nuts in there. I was able to get really close to them and take some good photos because it was so cold. They didn't care I was there, and they were just going to get the seeds. So it was a good day. So just to show you then this guided edit one, okay? And actually I can go to the quick edit and show you the difference. So here's this quick edit. I can play with things. Remember I said about lightening the shadows? Let's see if you can actually notice this as I do it. Right? You can see how on the right hand side, and I'm not sure how good this is coming across, but the feeder part, which was like a dark green, right? It was quite dark. It lightens up everything, but it lightens up the dark stuff more. So again, just ways of playing with things and messing around with some of the settings. And then just to show you, I'll show you that, what's going on here? Here's the drop down menu, there we go, guided. Just to really quickly show you, I just want to see here, I'll show you the straighten one just because that's the one we looked at a second ago. So I'm going to click the rotator straighten photo one. Now I've got this guide here where it says again, click the straighten tool, then draw a line. So let's just say, and it's sort of not straight. So let's just say I click the tool, and now you can see I've got, and this might be small on your screen, I've got a little crosshair here. And let's say I want to straighten it so that one of these lines on the bird feeder becomes the horizon. Right, so I'm going to draw this line across here, and now it's skewed the whole photo, right? So I've now got this perch on the bird feeder straight, whereas before it was a little bit crooked just because of the weight of the bird on it, or it was swinging or whatever. Okay, so I'm going to finish that, but I've now got these side pieces here that I don't like, so I'm going to crop it again. Right? So you just start to use some of these tools to get what you want out of your photo. So I've straightened it, and now I've got things a little bit more, sort of symmetrical down in this line here along the bottom. It just looks a little bit better, and it didn't take a whole lot of time just to play that. Or I was swinging, maybe I was whipping the camera around pretty quick trying to take some of these photos. So that's just to quickly show you, and like I said, I don't know how people's bandwidth is, so sometimes pushing a software demonstration through Illuminate can sometimes go awry for people. So if there's something specific you'd like to take a look, see the bird's reflection in the feeder, yeah, isn't that cool? Right? That's a good one, Louise, right there, right? So and that's the great thing about doing photography is you start to notice things that you didn't notice before, right? And I just love thinking that way and looking for things to take pictures of that you would never have thought about taking a picture of, but then all of a sudden you do a neat picture of it and you come up with something neat. So save changes, sure, I'll save the changes to that. We'll just call it that. Replace it. Oh my goodness. Maybe I shouldn't have did that. All right, so I'm going to stop my my sharing now and go back to the whiteboard. Where do you have the kids save their photos? That's a wonderful, wonderful question, and let's get to that because that's actually kind of where I'm going to go right after this. There's a couple of ways to do that, and it depends on there's a lot of ways to do it actually. If you're taking photos with a camera that has like a memory card that you can take out, or you can plug it in a USB cable in. Generally speaking, you can plug them into your computer and then save them in like a common drive somewhere. So I mean, I don't know how your boards are set up, but we have a student drive where students in a class have access to all the same folders. So teachers can put things in there and students have access to them, or students themselves can put them in and share them. So there's something as simple as that. So you plug in your camera to your computer, and then you download photos into the drive, and then they all have access to them centrally. So that's kind of the almost the old school way of doing it, I guess. If you it's just straight storage on a school computer. There's ways of doing it online, and I mentioned earlier about getting Flickr, a Flickr account. So www.flickr.com. It's Flickr with no E's. You can set up, and these are free accounts for just the basic account. You can set up a Flickr account so that you can email photos to the account. So if, for example, students have iPods, or if you're using cell phones, if you're able to go down that road, and people are taking photos, you can set up a Flickr account so that the kids are able to email from their device, from their phone or their iPod or whatever it is, to the Flickr account, and then they'll show up online in this class account, because you set up the account and then there's a very specific email address that's generated. You give that email address to the students, and they can shoot the emails to this central place, and then they have access to go and get them from that place anytime they want, which is kind of nice, right? If you think about kids, like the perfect example is something like a field trip, right, where kids are out taking photos at different places, and then they're emailing these photos to come back to a central spot to be used in whatever report or storytelling or whatever they're going to do later with them. So things like that. Another one that's a really good website, and Kathy is familiar with this one because we saw it actually at an ABLE conference a few weeks ago, is posterous.com, and that one's really cool because that one can be completely private, and it's very much a blog basically, but you can set it up so that it's completely private. You give kids a private email address, and they can take photos and email them, and then you get to approve them or disapprove them, approve them or not approve them, and then they appear on this blog. So it's not quite a photo sharing site like Flickr would be, but it's another way to share photos. And yeah, I mean, you can always use things like memory sticks, but I always lose those things too. And the nice thing about using either a shared drive or an internet service is that you have access to it all the time, right? And so that's one of the things that, quite frankly, it used to be a bit of a pain, is how do we get these things off of our camera or off of our phone so that we can do something with it. And all of these companies have built this in to all of their devices, all of their cameras, all of their things, because it's a huge, it was a huge problem. And so there's now a number of ways of doing that. All right, now what's Kathy say? It's the way the world is. Yeah, for sure, right? And that's exactly, it's another way of modeling that digital citizenship, right? Putting photos in a place, licensing them correctly, putting appropriate photos online, building that good digital footprint. all of those things we can teach them in class by doing something and not just telling them something. You know, we don't just say, don't put bad photos online. Instead, we set up a project where we're all putting good photos online for a very interesting purpose. And I think that speaks a lot more powerfully than you know, just saying don't do something. So that's just a little aside there, but thanks for that, Kathy. So one of the things that, you know, what time we got? 8:35. Okay, I just want to talk real quick about this one little inspiration thing, and then I'm going to cut you loose for probably 15 or 20 minutes or so, and hopefully we can share a few photos today as well, because I'd really like to be able to do that with you. One of the things that some people can go out and take photos, just take photos. They've got that artistic eye and that drive. For me, I needed something else. Like I love taking photos. I love just going out and taking pictures for the sake of taking pictures. But to me, it helped to have an assignment. And for a long time, there was a website called The Daily Shoot that posted an assignment every day. And for almost 2 years, it ended up being about 600 days in a row before the website closed down. I took at least one photograph every day. And they would post an assignment, and I did it. And I actually didn't miss a day for almost 2 years, and then the website closed down. And so I lost my motivation a little bit, which is very interesting from a personal sort of learning standpoint. A few other things have cropped up since then, and they sort of have filled that void, and I've started to use them a little bit, but I haven't quite got back to the one photo a day clip that I was on before. And so I just put a few examples up here. There's one called todaysposting.com, where every day they give you an assignment. There's another one called The Daily Create. This one's not strictly photo. It can be photo or video or audio. There's a bunch of different things, but it's an assignment every day to make something. There is projects on things like Twitter and Flickr, where they call them 365 projects, where again you're encouraged to do something every day. So take a picture every day. My good friend Andy Forgrave on Twitter, he's A Forgrave. He did it last March, and he's doing it again right now. He's got a March iPhone photo project. So he posts every day now for the month of March an assignment to take a picture using an iPhone, and then usually processing it with one of the apps that you can get for the iPhone. And like I was saying earlier, most of my sort of on-the-fly photography has been with my phone for the last little while. And so if you visit my Flickr page, you'll see some of the iPhone photos that I've been taking over the last week or so, thanks to Andy's prompting. So there's lots of ways of getting inspiration, and I love what Kathy just put here, right? I wonder about kids doing that one day of life in our classes. There's all kinds of ways to do that, right? You know, making it part of your daily routine that there's a photo or two taken each day, so that at the end of the year you've got this catalog of the whole day. Or, you know, kids can, using a webcam on their laptop, take a photo of themselves and store it on their S drive at the school, so they've got like 200 pictures of themselves at the end of the year, and you can see how their hair changed and how their braces changed and all of those different. So there's all these different ideas of things that I think are fun, are engaging, and if you intentionally plan some of the purposes for them, they can get to a lot of learning with kids. Okay, so that's just some of the inspiration that I've used as I've learned more and more about photography. All right, so I'm hoping you guys are up for a little fun here. We've got about, like I said, about 20 minutes left. I'm hoping that we can take some photos and share them. All right, so I'm guessing most people are home, and I'm also guessing, and this was a bit of a guess on my part, or a bit of an assumption. I'm guessing that most people are home, and I'm guessing you have access to some sort of a camera, and you're obviously on a computer. So I'm hoping that this all works. And if it doesn't work, then at least we can maybe get started on thinking about how to do this for you. I'm hoping that you can either sign up for a photo sharing site like Flickr, so that you have someplace to post photos online. If you're already somewhere where you can share photos, that's awesome. There's a whole bunch of them out there, and I'm not going to make you sign up for something that you're not going to use if you use something else, so that's fine. But any of these photo sharing sites, I recommend Flickr if you don't have one that you've signed up for, because it's free and it's quite simple to use. Grab a camera, any camera, take one or more photos of the following prompts. And prompts are down below. Edit or not, right? And again, I talked about all these different ways of editing. This stuff that's built into your computer. If you have it on an iPhone or an iPod, some of the apps you can get on there, right? Something you can do quickly and very simply to do an edit or not do an edit, and then post it online and post the link. So here's the challenges, and these are the kind of things that in some of the photo a day things that I've been part of, this is the kind of thing that they do. And this was actually, this first one was from the daily or today's posting from 2 days ago, I think. It said, make a photograph featuring a metal or metallic object or surface. So just something metal. So in your brain you go, oh geez, something metal. Take an interesting photo of something metal. The second one is, and I like this because it's getting us to look at something from a different angle. So take a photo of a normal object from an unusual angle, right? So I'll leave that up to you. And then another prompt that I like is a photo that isn't about the visual, it's about something else. So take a photo that we can, I put in quotes, almost here. So the idea is that it's a visual picture, but you can hear something in the photo. And these are the kind of things that when you give these challenges to kids, first of all, they like them because they're fun. But secondly, there's a lot of critical thinking and brain power that goes into thinking like that. So what does it mean to almost hear a photo? Because you're making parts of your brain that might not be always connected together sort of work together and fit a concept together. And there's some critical thinking that goes on there, and it's good practice and it's good brain power building for kids as well. So I hope we're up for a challenge. We got about 20 minutes. I'm going to stop talking. I'm actually going to go and do one or more of these things as well. I will be here though. I'll mute my microphone, but I'll have my speaker on. So if there's a question or not, or a question or whatever about something that I can help with, please stop and ask. So I'm hoping you can go and take a few photos and upload them and then share. All right, so I'm going to stop talking and take a picture or two. John, you can upload it to wherever you want. If you have a place that you upload photos online, feel free to use that. If you don't have any place, if you go to flickr.com in just a few seconds, you should be able to set up a free account there if that's an option for you. I suppose worst case scenario, you could email it to me if you didn't want to set up an account either. So just let me know if any of those work for you, okay? Okay, it's about 8 minutes to 9. I don't know how people are doing. If you've got some links, I've been looking at some of the stuff you guys have been posting. It's really cool. I've got 3 photos here that I just took, and granted, I was using my iPhone, like I said, so it was a lot quicker. With some, I used 3 different apps and took 3 photos and uploaded them to Flickr. The first one is a metal object, so it's just a picture of the microphone I have in front of me that I've been speaking through to you guys all night. The second one was a photo from an unusual angle. It's just a door into my room. I went down on the floor and took a shot out the door, and I played with that one a little bit in Instagram. And then my office is also my music room, and I've got a little handheld drum here. So I grabbed a picture of a moving drum baton whacking on a drum for the almost here photo. So that's what I've done. You're welcome to grab those and take a quick peek of them. Oh, here's Louise's. Awesome. I'm clicking away. Oh yeah, you did all 3 too. Nice. Nice. Metal scissors. Cool. Here, okay, the CD, great. In the angle, what is that, Louise? Like it looks like a glass globe of some sort filled with water. What is that? That angle one that you've? Like, what's the angle? I can't actually. It's a water bottle. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Now I do see it. Oh, that's really interesting because because it's the bottom, it looked like a globe, like a sphere in my mind. Isn't that interesting how I just saw it differently? Now I'm looking at the small picture right now. I didn't there when I zoom into it. It looks a little. That's cool. See, it's just the visual thing. That's with my mind. Yeah, that's very nice. Let's see, Elizabeth here. Project. Oh, you did a virtual trip on Google Maps. Awesome. Oh, that's great. Yeah, see, and I haven't even talked about stuff like that, but that's wonderful. Those things are just so cool. Thanks for sharing that. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Take photos, upload them to Flickr, link them to Google Map, tag them. Oh yeah, that's great. Just awesome. There's the photos. So now, is this something you did, or did you do it with the students, or did the students do it? How did you pull this one off? Because this is really awesome. I love those things. Oh, she's typing. Very cool. Okay. Like I said, we've only got about 5 minutes here officially. Is there any other things you want to share? Are people still, scrambling to try and make some photos? Oh, okay. There's a couple emailed to me here. Awesome. Camera isn't handy. Oh, that's great, Liz. Now I'm going to ask. I see Liz sent me a photo, and so did Kathy, and so did John. Can I just quickly upload those to Flickr, the three of you, so that everybody else can have a quick look at those? Is that okay with everybody? I can delete those photos later on from my account, but just so people could have a quick look. So Kathy, John, and Liz. Can I do that real quick? Do I have your permission, hopefully? See if I can do this real quick. Okay, hold on here. What's happening? Desktop. There we go. I think I've got the three of them. Just going to upload them right now. It might take a few seconds, so I'll put those links once they're there. So listen, thanks very much for participating and playing along with my goofy ideas. I really appreciate it when people try and join in the fun with me, because I think that's how we learn best. And I know it's how I learn best. And it's not just, I don't know. It's the making of things. I'm a big fan of making things and letting people sort of explore a little bit on their own, given the right conditions. So these photos are almost uploaded. I'll grab these links real quick to share them with everybody. And if there's any other questions people have, please ask away. Okay, here is. All right, I'm copying and pasting madly here. Here's the one that Liz put in, which is really cool. This is Kathy's, coming up in a second here. Copy, paste. One of Kathy's is a door as well, but a very a different angle, which is kind of neat. And here's John's picture of a metal water cup, if I remember from the email correctly, which is kind of cool. Awesome. So there's those three photos there. Yeah, thanks Louise for checking that. They said yes in the chat there. And I'll just so you know, the three that shared the photos, I'll remove those once we're done here. I'll remove them in a few minutes, but just so that other people can see them and have a look at what you created here tonight. Okay, and like I said, you've got my contact, and if you don't, you can find me online, lots of different places, Twitter or whatnot. Just Google my name, or there's my email address. And if I can ever help you, or you want to talk about something, just shoot me a message, and we can continue to play and learn. So I don't think I have another slide, do I? Let me just see here. Oh yeah, it was just the show and tell, which we just did. And then thanks. So there you go. So thank you. Oh good, thanks John. I'm glad somebody likes my think alouds. I do that a lot. Good stuff. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thanks, Liz. Thanks, Lauren.
I just want to take a few minutes here to thank Colin. Thank you, Colin, for a very, very informative presentation and for sharing so many resources for using technology with photos in the classroom. One of the tweets that went out tonight and got retweeted a number of times was sharing mountains of resources. So thank you, Colin. It certainly was true. And thank you all.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you all for spending the evening with us, and hopefully it was as useful for you as it was for me, and hopefully I'll have a chance to practice. I tried to get my cat to cooperate to get something that you could hear, but she didn't. Sorry about that. Louise is going
That's okay.
Louise is going to put up, oh, there it is, the link to the exit survey. Please fill that out. Your feedback is really, really important to us. We certainly aim to improve the program as we move along. I also ask if you could please share the OTF Connect site with your colleagues and encourage them and yourselves to check the site often, since we will be adding more workshops as time moves on. So thank you again all, and again Colin, thank you so much, and Louise, thank you for always being here to make everything run very smoothly. Thank you all. Good night.